I'd like to welcome you to St. John's United Church here in downtown Moncton, New Brunswick. It's wonderful that you're here with us in this way, and I thank you for being part of this service as we give thanks to God and celebrate the world around us, despite the hard times that we are facing right now. The beauty of the winter here in New Brunswick is always something to enjoy, as well as the spirit of our people, who are doing such amazing acts of kindness for our city. Just a few announcements. On Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. in March, we will be having an online Zoom Bible study. Words I couldn't have imagined saying just a year ago. A number of people have already signed up, and I'd like to invite you to sign up as well if you'd like to take part. We're going to need your email address in order to send you the link that will connect you to the Bible study. And we're going to have one more Zoom get-together as a congregation at the end of February, and that'll be announced, and we'll send out an email for that, just to help people get used to the technology a little more and to be more familiar with it for when we do have our Bible study. It's an amazing technology, and it's a gift to all of us. Also, I want to thank you for sharing your messages from last Sunday's communion service. It was nice to receive your emails telling me how you did it and some of the funny moments that you had and some of the profound experiences you had having communion. Income tax receipts are being emailed out as we speak, and if you would like a paper copy of your income tax receipt, just let us know and we'll be happy to get that to you. Thank you for your donations last year, sincerely. They have made all the difference for this old church making its way into a new world. Let us worship God. Please join me in our call to worship printed on your screen. Gathering in this sacred place, we anticipate new wonders each week. Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered to worship, a Holy Spirit is present. Open our eyes to witness the fantastic love and wondrous joy waiting to be revealed. Even this day, even in this place, we will want to linger and camp in this sanctuary. But when we leave today, may our hearts be open to all the wonders of God's beautiful world. Please join with me in our opening prayer. O Holy One, on mountain tops and valley floors, you reveal to us the light of your love. Our heart's desire is to bask in the amazing glory of the divine presence. With each encounter, we are changed and transformed. Draw us nearer that we might receive a double portion of your Holy Spirit. Help us, O Holy One, to live our lives as a reflection of divine glory. May we walk among our siblings and friends as a blessing, bearing light into dark places, hope to displace despair, and love that casts out hate. Our world is hurting, and we need the followers of Jesus to follow more closely. Maybe then we will hear your voice speaking to us and saying, "Listen to my child, the beloved." Amen. Peter offered to build a tabernacle on the mountain with Jesus. But God does not dwell in houses made with human hands. Let us offer ourselves in service to those God loves. Let us offer our sacrifices to build community, bring peace, and be a double blessing to those in need throughout the world. I thank you for the offering that you have made this week. It is received in gratitude and thankfulness. Let us pray. With these gifts, we proclaim not ourselves but Jesus, and commit ourselves to follow a way that leads to love and life. May our sacrifice be witness to our love for each other and the God who loves us all. Amen. Our hymn for today is O God, Beyond All Praising, and it will be followed by the scripture passage read by Julie Lackey, Psalm 50.
The mighty one, God the Lord, speaks and summons the earth, from the rising of the sun to where it sets. From Zion, perfect in beauty, God shines forth. Our God comes and will not be silent. A fire devours before him, and around him a tempest rages. He summons the heavens above and the earth that he may judge his people. Gather to me this consecrated people, who make covenant with me by sacrifice, and the heavens proclaim his righteousness, for he is a God of justice.
My thanks to Julie for being with us today. This is a reading from Mark's Gospel, chapter 9, verses 2 to 9. 6 days later, Jesus took Peter with him, and James and John, and led them on a high mountain apart by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. And his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, they looked around, and they saw no one with them anymore, only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one what they had seen. until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. Just before I begin today, I just want to say thanks for the mail I've been receiving and the letters, and it's just nice to have some encouragement and to know that this moment means a lot for people. It's a time that we're still living into as we wonder about the future as the vaccines are rolled out, but all these little things that we're doing to stay in touch really do mean the world. And so thanks for everything that you do to stay in touch with the people in your life. It's faithful and good. Let's pray. We come into this moment, O God, seeking the mountaintop moments of this life, knowing that we experience you there. Help us to walk back down the mountain and to get back to work in a world that desperately needs our love, our care, and our hope. Amen. As I've been watching news accounts of the insurrection at the American Capitol, as people describe one version of events, and then the video footage that is played shows it actually was that bad, I was remembering a book by Robert Burton called On Being Certain, Believing You're Right Even When You're Not. He's a neurologist who describes a psychologist who was studying what's called flashbulb memory, which is the memory of knowing where you were when something momentous happened, like where you were when the towers fell, or where you were when JFK was assassinated. You instantly put in your memory where you were and how it felt and what was happening around you. It's specifically a really detailed account. So this psychologist is studying this phenomenon, and he interviews his 106 students within 24 hours of the Space Shuttle Challenger exploding. And he asks them to describe their feelings, where they were, everything about the experience. And he took in all of their accounts, and 2.5 years later, he asked the students to come back and recount their experience again of where they were when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded. 25% of the students were way off. Only 10% had it exactly right, and everybody else in between didn't have all the details. Of the 25% of the students who got the memory way off, one student was so certain that his current memories were correct and said, "Well, that's my handwriting, but that's not what happened." It's a caution to remind us maybe to leave a little space for doubt in our memories. It might be better for our relationships. It might be a more truthful and scientific way of going about in life saying, I could be completely wrong about this. We die on hills that perhaps we don't need to die on. I think being able to say that you're not certain about something, especially when it comes to faith, is a sign of strength and maturity. The hill in Mark's gospel today is not actually a hill, it's a mountain, where Jesus comes alive in glory. High on the mountain, in a moment of luminous splendor, Jesus was clothed in the light of God, in an unearthly white that even Patty, our custodian, couldn't make with all of the Javex in the world. But this glory is just for a moment, and it's only for a few people. For a moment, there was no mystery, there was no questioning, only the revelation of who Jesus was and who God is, the God beyond all praising. And it's terrifying to the people who are witnessing this. And a voice speaks from the clouds, and then their fear is transformed when they hear the words, "Listen to him." It's not just for them that this is told. It's for all of us too. I've often, though, wondered about this story with my current day brain. It says that at the end of this passage, Jesus told Peter and James and John not to tell anyone what had happened, what they had seen, not even the other disciples, until he rises from the dead. Now, they don't even know what that means. They don't know the end of the story like we do. They don't understand what they've just seen, and they're trying to process it. If I had been up there with them and Jesus said, don't tell anyone about this, Aaron, and I got back down and everybody said, well, what did you see up there with Jesus? I'd say, not a lot. I just wouldn't be able to explain it in such a way that it would make any sense to anybody. So this story might seem familiar to you because the same thing happened at the baptism of Jesus when the clouds parted and you hear the voice of Jesus as the heavens, or the voice of God as the heavens are torn open. It's similar to the story of Moses ascending Mount Sinai to receive the stone tablets, the Ten Commandments. So with all of that and thinking of the story from Robert Burton, I wonder what it is that they saw on the mountain up there. And did they remember it the same way? What is it that you or I believe about this story as we read it and as we hear it and think about it? It always brings me back to seminary, where one of our professors would always say to us, the Bible isn't a DVD. We don't know exactly what happened, but we know that something happened. And as I read this passage and I prayed about it, I'm convinced that something happened on that mountain to change how these early followers of Jesus understood him and spoke about him and experienced God there. Julie read from Psalm 50, which is really a psalm that says, let God be God. We don't have to be the ones to get it right all the time. We can make mistakes. We can believe things at one point in our lives, and it is entirely a faithful act to change our minds based on our experiences and our education. And normally in the Psalms, we have someone who is either praising God or lamenting the way things are. But this psalm is actually a speech from God, and we're just silent and we listen. And it has this notion that the things we sacrifice in this life for God matter. They are noticed. We are noticed, no matter how small or insignificant we may think we are or our act of service was. God says that the real sacrifice is to show mercy. It's not about burnt offerings. It's not about the things that we do for show. It's about merciful things. That's where you will see God shining. It's a call to worship. God has made an entrance. And it's powerful words that we hear to describe this entrance. A towering splendor, blazed forth, devouring fire, mighty tempest. It's a biblical understanding of those words that sometimes perplex people, of fearing God, which really means to live with respect and integrity in our relationships, to treat each other with justice and kindness. That's how God gathers us as the people of God. It is a call to worship built on justice and kindness. And it's a risk to respond to the world with those things. Professor Brian Erickson says that the most risk many congregations take is parking their car before the church service. This Sunday, as we tell the story of the Transfiguration, it's one that, I guess it's such a big story that it asks us not to be mediocre in our telling of it. It's one that asks us not to play our cards close to our chest. It's not one that asks us just to simply look for the gist. Something bright and bold is happening in this story, and it's demanding a little more this week. More is asked of me and you when we read this ancient story of transfiguration, in which we, sometimes I think in these moments we're just kind of looking for a nice truth from a comfortable distance or a little proverb as a way to live our lives. But the psalmist says to us, our God is coming to us, not in silence. So how is it specifically today, right now, for you, for me, for us as a church, for us as a world? How is God coming to us? What is the call to worship? How is God being made known? This story and this psalm are about God out in the open, speaking boldly and shining on us mortals. The veil between heaven and earth are torn. The gloves have come off. We can hear the voice of God. So what's it saying? And yet, as we say that, we've been kept physically apart, off and on for the better part of a year. And this is going to go on for months. In some ways, we've learned to live without the fire and the storm of God as a gathered people. In some ways, we've stopped expecting those holy moments that we so often encounter when we're together. Whether it's when we're in church and we sing out with our heart and soul at Easter, Jesus Christ is risen today, or on Christmas Eve as we could sing joy to the world, we haven't been able to do that in a year. Nothing has replaced that feeling. Nothing has replaced in this building the sound of 150, sometimes 200 people at coffee hour, depending on the Sunday, all talking at once. That loudness, that joyful storytelling, the connecting of people, the creating of relationships and friendships. So we have become accustomed to the silence of God. We've almost had to settle for a God who rarely speaks. And I have to tell you, that breaks my heart. I don't want that for our church. So I do want to challenge us, you and me, to find those moments of God and glory in the world. As a church, as a people of faith, to not settle for the silence all the time, to search for the divine in life. There's a beautiful poem that I read by Killian MacDonald. It says this: I ask no Mount Sinai's, no Tabors, no cloud by day, no fire by night, just one unambiguous touch, lasting one beat of my heart. I've met people who've had that experience. I've met people who've been to the mountain of God in their hearts and minds, and I've met people who have only heard the stories of those things. And those stories, for those people, are becoming harder and harder to believe as life gets harder to live. That's when I remember that Peter and James and John were the only ones of all the disciples that were invited up to the mountaintop that day. The rest of the disciples had to stay seated in their pews. And that's why we need the testimony of those who have truly been to the mountain of God to preach to the rest of us in the valley of their experience of the something more, of the holy other, of the indescribable divine. That their experience of the holiness and the power of God is real and at work in this world. Their experience of the brokenness of the world is made manifest in the powerlessness of the cross of Jesus Christ. I would describe myself as a sentimental person. There's a lot that I can look back on with fondness and with good memories. There are heavenly moments that I can remember that perhaps weren't so heavenly at the time or too profound, and perhaps take on more meaning the further into the future that I go. What is it for you that would be considered a mountaintop experience? Where would you most experience, and with whom, the presence of God? Lori Ann talks about it in terms of just for one night a year, she'd like to be able to have a gathering of everyone who are no longer with us, and to have a celebration and to have a meal and to hear those stories and the laughter of those people. It'd be like the idea of Elijah and Moses and Jesus all sitting around. And I guess what I'm looking for in your understanding of that is the moments of where you sense the glory of God alive in your life. For others, the sense of the mountain comes from a devotion of service to others in the name of Jesus. A woman I know used to do social work, and she'd wonder in her garden as she considered the lilies, if she had considered all of the lilies and the people that were around her, if she was able to sense the quiet desperation in the world and to serve those people. What would the mountaintop look like for you and for us? Because it's there where you have most experienced the glory of God made known to us in Jesus Christ. I have to tell you, as I think about that question myself, I feel like when we achieve herd immunity I feel like that's going to be a giant exhale of people, of a breath that we didn't realize we were holding. And in that mountaintop experience, it's there where we will have been made known to the glory of God in Jesus Christ. In that moment, the threat of death no longer dominates our imagination. When COVID no longer dominates our life. When Jesus liberates us to follow him in the way. So it's not about being right. It's about being able to doubt. It's about being able to say, I could be entirely wrong about all of this, and still offer ourselves to the haunting hypothetical that Rabbi Harold Kushner talks about. What if it's true? So we have to show the mercy and kindness of the God who tears open the veil and speaks from the heavens. Listen to him. I invite you now to join with me in the words that Jesus taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thanks again for joining us this week. It's always wonderful to have you here. If this service is something that has been meaningful to you, I invite you to share it with a friend. And you can even fast forward the services, which I've noticed that some of you are doing. And the YouTube analytics that tell us about how our videos are being watched, each service is about a half an hour long, and the average watch time is just over 15 minutes. So you're skipping around, and that's okay. As long as you're getting something from it, that's the main thing. I also want to point out that someone sent a photo this week of our church, and it's one that I haven't seen before. It's an artist rendering, but it's pre-fire, so turn of the century, and I just want you to see this now. It's just beautiful. It's hard to imagine that the downtown area here was filled with so many trees at one time, but so it's a beautiful painting. I think it's a painting. There's no way that could be a photo, I don't think, but if you know any different, you can let me know. And now, may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the communion of the Holy Spirit go with each and every one of you this day and forevermore. Amen. God bless you all.